Howdy everyone, it's your buddy BP back at it again, this time playing some PlayStation VR. I mentioned before in my previous video I was working on something special, that I was working on something where I could introduce some new content to the channel if y'all were interested in it, and this is what I was talking about. I've been interested in virtual reality for quite some time now, but I've been kind of reluctant to make the jump, mostly because like the really high-end type of VR headsets like the Oculus Rift and the Vive or whatever it's called, those are pretty pricey, and in order to get those I would have to upgrade my PC rig, which means I'll be spending a few $100s more on top of what I bought, on top of the headset, just to get a better GPU and all that. And I was like, I don't know, because I'm interested in VR, but I'm not sure if it's for me, because I had a friend who tried VR and he said he got a lot of motion sickness and it just wasn't for him. And, you know, I don't want to be spending a few $100s for technology that I'm just not really going to use because it's not for me. So I decided to go for something a little mid-range. I decided to go for the PlayStation VR. It's not quite as good as the Oculus Rift and all of that, but I still think it's a nice mid-range kind of device. By the way, this footage is taken from a PlayStation 4 Pro. You don't need a Pro in order to run PSVR. I do believe it improves the game somewhat. It kind of smooths out, it improves the anti-aliasing, and I think it might improve frame rates and load times a bit, but you don't need it if you want to try out VR. You can still play PlayStation VR even with a standard model, but this is on a Pro for anyone wondering. But yeah, I was interested in trying out VR. I was worried of whether or not I'd be sick, so I decided to go for something a bit mid-range, and I figured a PSVR would be excellent, so I kind of got it for myself as a sort of, I guess you could say it's an early birthday gift. So I spent some money to go ahead and take the plunge, and I went ahead and got the PlayStation VR, and I gotta say, I'm pretty happy with it. I was a little surprised. In fact, I haven't really had any problems with motion sickness. I've had some dizziness. The game I'm playing right here, I'll talk more about it later in the video. I suffered a bit of dizziness playing it, but eventually I started getting used to it. But I haven't had like any serious problems with motion sickness or anything. So I'm thinking VR might be for me. I might really like it. I know it's not for everyone. I had to make some space in my living room in order to accommodate for it, because it comes with a camera, and I had to mount that on top of my TV. You can put it underneath your TV if you want, but from what I've read, it works better if it's mounted on top and it's looking at you from downwards, at a downwards angle. So I set it up like that, but I had to make some space in my living room so I could move around, because some of these games are best played with you standing up, and that kind of makes my legs real tired. You know, I can't play more than an hour before I kind of want to, like, you know, sit down for a little bit, which is probably for the best, because it can be a little bit of a strain on the eyes. I should also mention that I wear glasses, and it's required that you wear glasses with the VR headset. Thankfully, it's not too cumbersome. It comes with a microfiber cloth that's mostly for cleaning the lenses, which I typically do. I would recommend cleaning them after the end of every play session, but it seems like I'm using it more on my glasses, because, you know, when I put it over my face, there's like a lot of soft rubber, which does make it fairly comfortable to wear. But, you know, it goes over my face and my nose, and all those little bits of like oils and whatever it is on your face gets stuck on the plastic, and sometimes it rubs off on my lenses. So I put the headset on, and then I'm like, oh, there's a streak on my glasses, and then I gotta take it off and wipe my glasses down, and then carefully put it back on. And it doesn't quite fit on the back of my head quite as well as I hoped it would be. It doesn't really like strap to the back of my head, more so than it kind of just sort of, I guess you could say, it rests on the top of it. It still works. It doesn't like fall off or anything. I did have to kind of get a little accustomed to wearing it, but it's pretty good. I don't have any Move controllers. Some of these games require Move controllers, and some of them are just like, it's recommended, but you don't need it. Like this game right here has compatibility with Move controllers, but you can play it with the DualShock just fine, which is what I'm doing. I'll probably get some Move controllers in the future, but I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to buy them new. I'm not going to be shelling out no $100 for a pair of 6-year-old controllers. You know, screw that. I'll see if I can get them off of eBay or something at maybe half of that. I would like some Move controllers, because I know it does improve some of these games, but like I said, I ain't spending no $100. I already spent plenty of money just to get this headset, so, you know, screw that. I'm not going to be going through all that trouble. But yeah, I just want to go ahead and show off some of the games I got and talk a little bit about VR and maybe get some of y'all's recommendations on stuff you'd like to see on the channel if you're interested in me doing VR content. A few other things. One of the things I tried that I don't have any footage of here is I guess you could say it's an app for PlayStation called VR Next. It allows you to watch things like sporting events in VR. Of course, I can't show you in footage here because of the PlayStation has a built-in copyright protection to prevent you from recording that stuff and uploading it. So I couldn't get any footage of it here. It was pretty neat. I couldn't find any NFL games. I was pretty sure I remember reading that you could watch NFL games on it, but I couldn't find any. There were some basketball games, though, and you could watch some like pro wrestling and stuff. That was pretty cool. I don't know if I would watch a whole game that way, at least not on the PSVR. Like I said, it's kind of mid-range. It's not really a... I mean, there's like a 1080p display in there, but you're not actually getting 1080 because the picture is kind of getting divided between both eyes, so it's kind of a reduction in picture quality. It does look pretty neat, though. I like watching like the highlights. I watch a few minutes of that. That was pretty cool. Things do get a little bit blurry when you start looking at things at in the distance. It gets a little bit of that kind of screen door effect. It's not really severe, but you can detect it just a little bit on stuff that when you're looking at things in the distance. And when you're looking at things up close, you can get a little bit of that double vision. Like on one of the basketball games, they have one of the cameras, the VR cameras, like right up against near where the hoop is, which is really cool when they're going for like, you know, dunks and everything. So I really enjoyed that. But the thing is, when you turn over to look at the hoop, because of the way the cameras are distanced apart in each lens, you kind of get that double vision effect on things that are really close. So you get that double vision effect when you're looking at the hoop. So it's not perfect, but it was really cool. I did enjoy trying it out. So it was pretty fun. Like I said, I probably wouldn't watch a full game of like basketball or, you know, football or anything in at least not that way with the PSVR. I don't think I would want something with a sharper picture and maybe a better frame rate, because I did notice there were some frame rate issues with some of the games. But I mean, if you could improve that, then yeah, I would probably watch a game. But yeah, I couldn't sit around and watch a 2.5 hour game on a PSVR like that. But it was really cool. It did have me interested in watching content like that. So yeah, that was one thing I wanted to mention. I didn't have any footage of it, but I wanted to mention it. I was also thinking about maybe getting Ace Combat 7, because I know that came out recently. Get some footage of me playing that, but unfortunately, I couldn't find a copy of it anywhere. It's like every store that sells video games is sold out of Ace Combat 7. It was way more popular, I guess, than I thought it would be. So, I mean, I guess it's probably for the best, because I heard it's a really intense experience in VR, and I'm not used to playing those sorts of games, so I probably just get killed over and over again. So I might try that out sometime in the future. But instead, I kind of took my money and bought a few other games instead, so I'll be showing those off. But yeah, I might try that out in the future. But anyway, let's talk about some of the other games that I got for PlayStation VR. The first game I want to mention is Astro Bot, and this one actually came with my VR headset. It was one of two games that came with my PSVR set, and it's kind of a classic sort of platformer game in the tradition of like Mario and whatnot. And I really enjoyed this one. I'm glad they included this, because I think this is a great game to play if you're not accustomed to VR. It's pretty simple. It's easy to pick up and play. It's pretty forgiving on the player. And it's a lot of fun. I was surprised about how much I enjoyed it. It's not quite like like Mario good, but it's pretty damn close. So I mean, I probably wouldn't be too impressed by this if I were just playing it like 2D. But in VR, it actually works because it makes good use of all the things that PSVR has. You know, of course, you can look around the environment, look behind you for, oh man, I wasn't paying attention there. But look around for like secret hidden stuff, and of course it uses controller tracking. You can like use your controller to like bonk your little Astro Boy guy, little Astro Bot fella, and you can use it uses head tracking. Sometimes you got like headbutt obstacles to get rid of them, and it's surprisingly well done. It's just a very well made game. It's a little on the easy side, so if you're a very experienced platform gamer, then this probably isn't going to give you too much of a challenge. But I will say it was a lot of fun. It makes good use of the VR technology and the head tracking and everything. I like this little bit when you rescue them, you can look down in your controller and everything. It's really neat. It's very cute. And it's a very fun game, and it came with my PSVR set. So if you're looking to get PSVR and you want to know which bundle to get, if you see the bundle that includes this game, I would strongly recommend it. I think it's great for people who are trying to get accustomed to virtual reality, and it's just a really fun game. And of course, if not, you can buy this game separately. I typically see a copy of it in a lot of game stores. Strongly recommend this. This is definitely what you might call a killer app for the PlayStation VR. A lot of fun. Definitely recommend this one. Next game I want to talk about is Moss. This is the second game that came with my PlayStation VR bundle. And unlike Astro Bot, this one was actually a download code. It didn't come with a physical hard copy, which is a bit of a shame. I kind of like having hard copies of my game. And the fact that this one didn't come with one was a bit of a shame, but I still kind of liked it. It was a really interesting game. It's also a platformer like Astro Bot, but whereas Astro Bot's more like a traditional type of platformer with like collectathons and stuff, this one is a bit more puzzle-based. It doesn't kind of follow your character around like it does in Astro Bot. You kind of move from area to area, and the game world just sort of fades in and out. So it's almost more like you kind of got this like little set piece in front of you each and every time. As you can tell, it's a little bit finicky with tracking, so I tend to see that in some games. Like, some games really don't like you leaving out of the PlayStation camera view area. And the Moss seems to be a little bit more finicky. It's a bit more difficult, but it was fun. I did enjoy it. I haven't beaten it yet, but I did like it. There's a little bit of combat involved, but it's very simple. You just kind of have like a sword slash, and sometimes you can like grab an enemy with your controller because there is controller tracking, and you just kind of hold them still so you can easily attack them. So it's a little bit of a balancing act, controlling your character and also manipulating the environment by hand using the same controller. So it's a little tricky, but it's really fun. It's very puzzle-based. You can use the controller to sort of manipulate things in the environment like you saw earlier. Like sometimes you gotta like grab something to slow down an obstacle or move something out of the your character's way, and that's kind of it. It's very puzzle-based. There's a little bit of collecting involved. There's some like hidden stuff, but it's very nice. Things look a little, I guess you could say, screen doorish from a distance. So when you're looking at stuff from far away, it does the picture quality does kind of take a little bit of a dip. But other than that, I'd say this looks very nice. It's a bit more puzzle-based, so if you're in something with a lot more action to it, you're probably not going to enjoy this game as much, but I really liked it. The music was also very nice. It's got a nice little sort of fantasy aesthetic to it that I really got a kick out of, and some of these puzzles were a little bit challenging. I was a bit surprised. So it involves you having to sort of think a lot, and this is still early in the game, but it involves you having to really think about the environment and where everything should be, and having to manipulate stuff in the game world with the controller while also maneuvering your character is a little bit of a balancing act that takes some getting used to, but I did get a kick out of it. I'll probably go back and play some more of this later, but right now I'm kind of interested in more of the action-oriented games. But I do like Moss, and I'm glad that it came with my PlayStation VR headset. The next game I got this one instead of Ace Combat 7 because I couldn't find it, was Zone of the Enders, or if you want to get technical, it's actually called Zone of the Enders, the second runner Mars, and the A in Mars is turned upside down for whatever reason. I don't know. This game was, this is of course an HD remaster of an older game that was made by Hideo Kojima, who's best known as the man behind Metal Gear Solid, and really the whole Metal Gear series. And this was made, I think it was about around the same time as Metal Gear Solid 2, which is kind of obvious. It kind of has a visual style that's very reminiscent of that. It was kind of a fun action game, but of course this game wasn't originally made for VR. It was just kind of got an HD remaster update, and they kind of included some some VR features to it. It's not bad. You're like in the cockpit of this giant robot thing, whatever it's called. You know how Japan loves its giant robots. And it's neat to kind of look around and see things, but it's clearly kind of like an afterthought. It wasn't made with VR in mind. They just sort of added it on. Not a bad game, though. I gotta say, as a VR experience, it underwhelms me a little bit because, again, it was just it wasn't really made for VR. And one of the things that kind of drove me nuts is that it's really heavy on the cutscenes. There's a lot of cutscenes and a lot of dialogue, and the voice acting isn't the best. And of course, all these cutscenes, when they happen, it switches to this sort of like 2D cinema screen mode. You kind of leave the VR environment, and then you got to watch this cinema screen in order to view all of these cutscenes. And then it goes back to VR, and these cutscenes, they go on for so long. And as an action game, it's not bad. But I was just so frustrated with the constant starting and stopping and how long these cutscenes took. And it was just really, really frustrating. Like I said, it's a fun game, but I got this headset because I really wanted to try out VR and see how fun it was as a sort of gaming experience. But it was really hard to appreciate that when there was just these constant interruptions. And of course, the game wasn't really made with VR in mind, so that was a little bothersome. Like I said, it's a fun game, but if you're new to VR and you want something that's really exciting and that really just kind of takes you into the action, then I probably would consider like getting this later down the line. This is probably not something I would consider as a really good first experience for VR, but it's not too pricey. You could probably get it for about $30, which is okay. But yeah, fun game. I just wouldn't recommend it as a first-time VR experience. The next game I tried was Valkyrie, or rather Valkyrie Warzone as it's known. I guess they did an update to it since it released. I went and got a hard copy, and it was just Valkyrie, and then there was a big update, and then when I fired it up, it's Valkyrie Warzone now, so I guess they did something to it since then. I was kind of hesitant, a little worried about playing this one for two reasons. Ooh, excuse me. I ate before I did this. But I was a little hesitant to play it for two reasons. First, that buddy of mine I mentioned earlier who said he got motion sickness from playing PSVR. This was the game he said he was playing, and he said it really, really made him sick, and he did not like it. So I was kind of worried about that. And thankfully, that wasn't really much of a problem for me. I never got motion sickness playing this. I did get pretty dizzy because, as you can tell, it's kind of a space-themed dogfighting kind of game. There's a lot of that going on, which is, and when you're twisting and turning, and you're in these environments where there's a lot of obstacles. There's like asteroids and debris and other spaceships, so you gotta watch out for all of that. But and when you're taking these really sharp turns and these banks and whatnot, it can get very dizzying. But eventually I did get used to it, and I never got motion sickness, so that wasn't really much of a problem for me. However, the other problem was that I was aware that this game's online community had kind of dwindled since its release. This game's been out for about 2 years, and it didn't have the best release. It came out at full price, like $60, and I would not spend $60 for this game. I got it for like maybe 20, and that was fine, or at least it would be fine if there was a better online community. Right now, I'm pretty much playing against mostly bots here, And I will say, it is fun. It's kind of like Paladins or Overwatch, but with like spaceships. There's like different classes of ships, and they all have different types of weapons and abilities. And you gotta pick one, and you're with like a team and like matchmaking, and you kind of like create like a little team comp, and then you just go out there and you fight the other team, and you see who wins. You know, it's that kind of game. And it's pretty fun. And of course, you got like your abilities with cooldowns. There's like an ultimate ability and stuff, and it's just a lot like that. You just kind of pick which class of ship you want and which ship in that class you like best. Maybe you like certain one's weapons, or you think they got a better setup and or better abilities. And you just pick which one you want, and you go for it. And it's actually a lot of fun. I did enjoy this quite a lot. I found myself playing this a lot more than I thought. Unfortunately, the online community, it's not there. Of course, I did run into some players. There are some people that are still carrying the torch for this game, which is good because it's not a bad game. But it did have a pretty crummy release. It was very overpriced. There's a single-player campaign, but there's not much to it. It's very brief. Yeah, it's really made with multiplayer in mind. And it really does need more content to it. I would also like if there was a little bit more to it for ship upgrades. So, like, when you're playing as a certain ship, like, you get more experience with that ship, and you can kind of upgrade it a little bit, so you can upgrade certain abilities, or your weapons, or your armor, or your shields and stuff. Like, I do enjoy that. I thought that was really cool. But that's really about it. There's not too much to that. I would have liked if there was a little bit more to it. So, I mean, it's a fun game, and the VR experience is really good. The game looks sharp, and the VR is great. You really do feel like you're in the cockpit of this massive spaceship, and you're flying around, and you're shooting everyone, and when you get shot down, it's like the whole breaks, and, you know, the whole cabin decompressurizes, and everything just starts freezing because you're in the frozen vacuum of space. It's a really cool effect. I thought it would scare the hell out of me, but I actually got used to it very quickly, so I was glad I didn't get sick from playing it. But yeah, it's a fun game. It's just it's a shame that the community for it is so very small. It just had a really bad start. And the thing is, I actually I do kind of like Eve. I've actually played Eve Online before. Many years ago. I tried it for a little bit, and I thought it was a fun game, but it's extremely complex. And it's one of those games you definitely need to be playing with a lot of other people in order to get the most out of it. So I was sort of familiar a little bit with the Eve Online universe, so you don't need to be in order to enjoy this game. But, yeah, it was kind of fun to kind of step a little bit back into Eve. I don't know if I'll ever go back to playing the Eve Online. Part of the reason I stopped playing because I just didn't have the time to commit to it. It really involves a good bit of commitment in order to get the most out of it. But I do kind of like space games. I do kind of like spaceships and traveling to other planets and stuff. So this was right up my alley. I kind of enjoyed it. But it's just a shame that the online community just really isn't there anymore. But, you know, it's a decent game. If you could probably get it for like maybe $10, maybe you'd enjoy it. But yeah, on release, I wouldn't have paid $60 for this. But, you know, for $20, I guess it's okay. It's not bad. Next game I got was Farpoint. This is sort of a science fiction themed. I'm having a little bit of trouble with the camera tracking here. I'll mention more about that shortly. Kind of a sci-fi themed action game with some horror elements to it. Pretty interesting. It's kind of got this story where you're marooned on this sort of mysterious planet, you and like two other astronauts, as a result of some sort of bizarre accident in space. It's very difficult to describe, but it's pretty fun. I would say as like any kind of ordinary first-person shooter game, I probably wouldn't recommend it. There's really not much to it, but as a VR experience, it's surprisingly good. I had a lot of fun with it. It's a pretty good shooter game. I did have some trouble with tracking because I'm using the DualShock controller, and of course I use the left thumbstick to move around, and you just sort of move in whatever direction you're facing. Of course, you can like turn your head and move around. But occasionally I found myself having trouble with the tracking. Like, I would be moving forward, or at least I'd be pressing forward on the stick, but my character isn't quite moving forward. It's kind of like strafing forward in a diagonal direction. and I would have to correct this by, like, you know, stepping around, like just kind of shuffling myself around and pivoting my body in a certain direction to get it correct, or I could just go to the start menu and reset the camera tracking, which normally wouldn't be a problem. I wouldn't fault the game for that, but I found myself having to do it a lot, which was really annoying. So usually after every firefight, I'm kind of like find myself, or at least maybe every other firefight, I'm like kind of stopping to check to see if my motion, or rather my the interplay between the controls and how my character is moving is correct. So I had to keep correcting that. That was a bit annoying, but it was still a very fun game. The action's pretty good. You get these weapons that kind of have unlimited ammo, but they have an alt fire mode, which you get a limited number of shots for. You'll notice this blue grid that pops up. That's from there to remind you where you are in relation to the camera, so you're constantly being properly tracked by the camera, so you don't kind of fall out of the play area. I like that. That's a pretty good feature. I just wish it was better at tracking my my movement. That was a little frustrating, but as an action game, it's pretty good. The shooting feels very responsive. It feels like it tracks my controller pretty well. It's just it doesn't track you as well as I would hope. And of course, you can kind of like shuffle things around. You can like examine your weapon like that. It's a really cool feature. So I'm not sure if this is move compatible. I know there's kind of like a rifle type controller thing that you can use for the PlayStation VR that's compatible with this. I do not have that. Maybe I'll get that in the future if I'm really interested. But I was a little worried to see how well shooter games would work with VR, but it works pretty well. It's just this one game in particular had trouble with tracking me in VR. It was a little frustrating, but it was fun. It was challenging, and there's some cutscenes too, but they're surprisingly well done. There's some facial animations that look really sharp. They look really well done, and dang it, I got killed there. Dang it. You see me shaking my head like, damn it. But they're very well voice acted. They're pretty well written. I like them quite a lot, and unlike Zone of the Enders, they don't take freaking forever, and you can enjoy them in VR. So that's a plus. By the way, if you're playing this, try to go for those enemies that shoot projectiles at you first, if you can. Those ones are really annoying. But yeah, you can kind of position your weapon so you can look down the sights. It works surprisingly well. I'd like to try this out with that sort of, I guess, controller that works a bit like a rifle. See how well that works. But it works pretty. It's pretty fun. It's action-packed. It has some exciting moments to it. I think there's like co-op and competitive multiplayer in it now. I saw like when I started playing it, there's like a little feature came up says, "Oh, by the way, we got all this stuff in the game now." So that's pretty cool. I don't know how big the competitive multiplayer community is for this. I mean, the fact that it's on VR already kind of makes it a bit niche. And, well, I don't know. I didn't try it for myself, but single player is pretty fun. And I got this for like maybe 20 bucks, which I say is a pretty good price for this. Like I said, my only real complaint is how the tracking works with your body and the camera. I keep having to kind of readjust things so I'm moving in the right direction when I press forward on the thumbstick. That's kind of frustrating. I wish that wasn't the case. Other than that, I would give this a pretty strong recommendation. It's a nice shooter, and it looks pretty sharp in VR. I'm surprised as to how well it looked. So yeah, it's a pretty good game. I was impressed with it. And of course, there's Skyrim. You can't have PlayStation VR and not have Skyrim VR, am I right? Everyone's played Skyrim. It's the game that just won't go away. It's been re-released about a dozen times in the past few years, and I'm sure there's some people out there that just keep going back and buying it. This is only the second time I bought it, though. I bought it when it first came out, and I never went back and bought any of those like HD remasters or Game of the Year editions of it. This is the first time I've gone back to repurchase Skyrim. Of course, this is in VR, so I was willing to try it. Pretty fun. I will say I'm playing with the DualShock controller here. It is move compatible, and I'm definitely thinking that the Move controllers are best for this game. I'll probably get them eventually so I can play this. It just doesn't feel quite as comfortable in VR without the controllers, or rather the Move controllers. The DualShock is okay, it works fine, but it's just, I don't know, it just doesn't feel quite as right here in the virtual landscape. So yeah, I didn't play too much of this. I haven't had much of a chance. This is actually from footage from my first attempt at playing this at this game, and I actually got a tiny bit of I got a tiny bit queasy near the end of playing this. I was playing it for not quite an hour, but I guess close to it. And I was getting a tiny bit queasy, though that was probably my fault because I was getting really overzealous and I was like turning off all the comfort settings, like all the blinders and everything. So I was like, oh yeah, I haven't had any motion sickness in VR. I can just turn all this stuff off. I'm good. And then later in the game, I started feeling a little queasy. So I was like, maybe I should go back and kind of ease myself in. So yeah, if you're going to get this, and I'm guessing if you get PlayStation VR, eventually you're going to get Skyrim VR because it's one of those sort of killer apps for PSVR. But yeah, if you do get this, I would recommend kind of easing your way in, because I pretty much never get motion sickness playing virtual reality, but I did get a tiny bit queasy playing this, and that was because I went in with a woo with all the comfort settings off. So don't turn off all the comfort settings right at the start of the game. You know, kind of ease yourself in, get used to all the new controls. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to get PlayStation VR, you're going to have to get Skyrim at some point. I was glad this came with all the DLC too. I was thinking about getting Borderlands VR, but then I remember reading that they charge you full price for Borderlands VR, which wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for the fact that it didn't come with any of the DLC, because there's a ton of DLC for Borderlands 2, and Borderlands 2 is a blast. There's also no multiplayer for Borderlands VR, which kind of sucks, but I could live without that. But the fact that there's absolutely no VR or rather, absolutely no DLC for the VR version of Borderlands 2. That thing looked massive in VR, by the way. This sort of I don't know if it's an elk head or what, but holy crap, that thing looked enormous in VR. It was really kind of blowing my mind. But anyway, it's getting sidetracked. But yeah, that's probably the reason why I didn't pick it up. I'll probably eventually get Borderlands VR, but I'm not going to be spending no $50 on it, not without the DLC. That game is at least 6 years old? And they want me to spend full price for a game with no DLC that's that old? Nah, I ain't doing that. I'll probably get it used sometime down the line. But, yeah, as for Skyrim, pretty good. You definitely got to pick it up if you're eventually going to get PSVR. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to go back and play it again until I get the Move controllers, because it just doesn't feel quite right without the Move controllers. Definitely looks a lot more fun. Using magic definitely is a blast the way because it does track your the DualShock controller when you move your hands around, so that was really cool. I did enjoy that, and this was much better at tracking my my movement than Farpoint was. Farpoint, of course, like I said, I had to keep going back and changing my settings to make sure that I was moving in the right direction when I was pressing forward on the movement stick, but I never had that problem with Skyrim. It was on point. So yeah, definitely recommend Skyrim VR if you're getting a PlayStation VR. Though I will say it definitely runs better with the with the PlayStation Move controllers, which I will be getting eventually, but I won't be getting them used, or rather, I won't be getting them new, because I ain't paying no $100 for 6-year-old controllers. But yeah, moving along. Next, I wanted to get into some of the more obscure stuff, the stuff I kind of bought off of the PlayStation Store, stuff I just downloaded online, and I definitely want to go ahead and mention Rez, or rather Rez Infinite first. This is if there's any two games I've mentioned here that I would consider killer apps, like stuff you absolutely must get if you get PSVR, one is Astro Boy and the other is this. This game is fantastic. Now, Rez has been out for years. I think the first Rez came out in 2001, 2002, around there. A lot of people call it a music game, but I wouldn't say that. I mean, being good at like rhythm and understanding like music is not really part of the game. I mean, music definitely kind of plays a role. It has a sort of music motif to it, I suppose you can say. And that fact, there's like, as you progress through the level, there's like a skeletal track, and it becomes more complex as you progress through the stage. And when you shoot things, it kind of makes like a musical tone that works with the that kind of layers over the background music. Pretty cool in that sense, but really it's kind of an on-rail shooter. If you ever play something like, say, Panzer Dragoon or something like that, you probably got an impression as to what this game is like. It's just sort of a on-rail shooter. There is some extra levels called Area X, which where you have a little bit more freedom of movement. But most of the game is like this. It's kind of like an on-rail shooter, and it looks great in VR. It runs beautifully. It's really sharp. It's definitely one of the sharpest looking PSVR games that I've played yet. I strongly recommend this. It's a little pricey though. It's like somewhere around $30, $40. So it's pretty pricey, and it's for a lot of content that's been out for a while. But it just runs so well in VR. I mean, this game's been out for so many years, and but in VR it just feels natural. It's like this game was made for VR, and it was just waiting for the technology to finally catch up to it. There's a lot of head tracking in there too. Of course, you can use the thumbstick to kind of move the cursor around if you want, but there's head tracking, and the controls are super simple. I can just look directly at what I want to shoot and hold down the X button, and the game does the rest of the work for me. So there are some moments where it gets really complicated. Oh, excuse me, when you're fighting bosses and stuff, and it starts like throwing a lot of attacks at you at once. But it's really comfortable to play. I mean, it might look kind of frenetic here, but I was surprised. I didn't get any dizziness or headaches or anything like that playing it. It feels really comfortable to play. I'm sure looking at it here, it's just really headache-inducing, but I gotta say, playing it in VR, it was surprisingly comfortable. I strongly recommend this game. This and Astro Bot. I think these are like two of the best games to play if you're trying to get accustomed to VR, at least on the PlayStation. They're fantastic games, especially this one. I really played a lot of this, so I strongly recommend Rez. Even if you already played Rez before, you're like, I played Rez, you know, it's been out for a while. Do I really need to go back and play it in VR? Let me tell you, this game feels like it was made for VR. It almost feels like, you know, this is the way it's supposed to be played. Like, if you have not played Rez until you tried it in VR. Like, I don't think I could ever go back to playing Rez any other way than this. This is a fantastic VR game. Big recommendation for Rez Infinite. The next game I tried was Thumper. Now, this was actually on the demo disc that came with my PlayStation VR headset. So, technically, I got 3 games, or rather 3 discs with it. Not really even discs, because Mosk didn't come with a disc. You know what I'm talking about. Articles of software. But this game is, unlike Rez, this one actually is a lot more like a rhythm game, because having rhythm can really help you out with playing this game. You're kind of like on this track, and you gotta hold down the X button and the stick to kind of maneuver around obstacles and stuff. I always wanted to try this game ever since I saw H-Bomber guy played in one of his videos. I think it was his video where he was talking about Dark Souls 2, which I'm still working on. I'm still working on my Platinum Trophy run on that. I'll be getting back to that soon, but I wanted to, you know, make this video about PlayStation VR first and get y'all's impressions on it. But this was on the demo disc. This is not the full version of the game. I'll probably get the full version at some point. But I tried this out, and this is my first, I think this might be my first attempt trying this game. Ooh, excuse me. And I gotta say, it looks really sharp in VR. It's just nice. There's like points when you're at the end of this track and you're fighting like a boss, and it looks like this huge demon head and everything. It's really freaky looking. But it looks amazing in VR. This game is just... It's one of those games that feels like it was made for VR, just like Rez. I haven't tried the full version, so I don't know if I can safely say I recommend it here, but The demo disc came with sort of like the whole first level of the game. I don't know how many levels or tracks or whatever it is there are for this game, but I will say that I did enjoy this quite a lot. If the rest of the game is like this, then I will recommend it. It was pretty fun. It looks sharp. The music was really cool. Control-wise, it's pretty simple, just like Rez. There's only a few buttons you need to worry about, so you'll get accustomed to it pretty quickly. And it looks really cool, like when you're going through these tunnels. Like, everything really does look like it's in 3D. It's very sharp. I really like it. So this is another one I would probably recommend. I still want to play the full version before I give a legitimate recommendation to it, but I was impressed. So this was another really good game that I liked. Now here's a really fascinating game. This is the one you saw me playing at the beginning of the video. This one is called Megaton Rainfall. You can get this one on the PlayStation Store for less than $20. It's around $18, $16, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I'm not quite sure how to describe it. Superman simulator, I guess? Basically, this was made by pretty much a one-man studio. I think he got a little bit of help from other people in a few departments, but I think it's like 95% him making this game. And, yeah, basically you're playing this sort of like, I'd say Superman, but it's probably closer to like Dr. Manhattan, really, character. And you're in this, it's like a full scale of Earth. This guy actually took like photos from NASA, and he made this like full scale Earth with like a few select cities and landmarks on it. And you just travel all over the globe, and you fight these sort of they're called intruders. I don't know if they're like space aliens or what. But they're basically, they fly around in these giant ships, and they look like giant robots, and you have to defend the people from all of these intruders, as they're called. And of course, you get ridiculously powerful as you go on. As you can tell, I'm already like flying into orbit, and I'm going at like supersonic speeds. And eventually, you'll get to the point where you can literally just fly out into space. You can actually fly like far out beyond the Milky Way and explore the rest of the galaxy. Of course, when you're told this, you're also reminded, like, by the way, there's really not a lot out there. It's just kind of out there. So for the sake of exploring, I think there are some hidden stuff. There's like little secondary objectives that you can get, and I think if you get them all, it like contextualizes the ending. Because I did beat this game. This is a pretty short game. You can beat it in about 2 hours, maybe 3 or 4 if you really want to take your time. But it has a very strange ending. Kind of caught me off guard, and I guess when you get all the hidden parts, it kind of contextualizes the ending a little bit, kind of helps it make sense. But as a game, it's pretty fascinating. It's really rough around the edges, though. And this game made me really dizzy when I played it, because you're flying above Earth and you're really high up, and it kind of messes with you. As you can tell, I also got some of the, I guess you could call it the comfort features on, like the blinders here, which kind of get into the side of your field of vision whenever you're like near surfaces or things blocking you in the environment, to kind of reduce the risk of things like dizziness and motion sickness. Eventually, I got to the point where I was so accustomed to the game, I was able to shut them off, and so I got accustomed to it. But man, it took me a while to get used to this one. But when I did, I had a lot of fun. It's a very brief game, so, and it is kind of rough around the edges, apart from these cities, which it does have a lot of sort of copy and pasted buildings and roads and stuff. They're not too dreadfully detailed. They've got some landmarks, but like I said, it's pretty rough. It almost feels more like a glorified proof of concept, but I had a lot of fun with it, and I think if VR catches on, because it plays pretty well in VR, it almost really feels like it's made for VR. It's really exciting to play, and I think if VR does catch on as a medium for playing games in the future, becomes a little bit more accessible, then I think we could be seeing more games like this, because this was a blast to play. I would love to play like a Superman game like this, where like, yeah, you can fly to Metropolis, and you can fly to like maybe Gotham City and like meet Batman and other people in like the DC universe, and you can like fly underwater, because you can go underwater in this game too, and you can like go to Atlantis. Here I am kind of fiddling around with the headset some. You have to turn around a lot while playing this game, and the cable attached to the back of the headset sometimes gets coiled around me, and I find myself not quite tripping over it, but it gets in the way, so it's a little cumbersome to play in that regard. But yeah, it would be really great. You can like fly out to other planets, and like you could see like a Superman game like this, couldn't you? Like this is the ultimate. This would be like the ultimate Superman game. Kind of makes me wonder if Angry Joe has played this, because I know he's tried VR in the past, and I know he's a huge Superman fanatic. And this is like the proof of concept of the Superman game that he would just always love to play. So someone needs to like hit up Angry Joe and say, "Hey man, play Megaton Rainfall in VR." It might be. It's not quite the game you've always wanted, but it's probably the closest anyone's come to it. And what's amazing that it's almost all done by this one guy. He's just always wanted to make a game like this, and he just took the initiative and he made it. I was really impressed. Like I said, it's rough. It definitely kind of looks like a game at some points that was made by just one guy, but I had a lot of fun playing it, and for the money, it's really good. You get a lot of content. There's like a hard mode that you unlock after beating the game. And there's like little collectibles too. And of course there's trophies, so you can like challenge yourself in other ways. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I actually already played and beat this one. I beat this one the other night. And I definitely like to try it again. It's definitely not a game I would recommend for people who are a little inexperienced with VR. It can be very dizzying, like flying up above the earth and going at really high speeds. So yeah, it can freak you out. I would recommend kind of easing your way into a game like this. I had to ease my way into this game because it was kind of freaking me out, man. It was really making me feel really dizzy when I was playing it, but when I finally got the hang of it, it was a blast. So I would definitely recommend this game if you're really hardcore into VR and you want something that's very different from what you would otherwise play. So you can also play this in non-VR if you want, and I guess that's okay, but really, this game feels like it was made for VR. So if you're into something that's really interesting for your PlayStation VR headset, try this one out. I wouldn't mind even doing a Let's Play of this, because it's pretty short, and it's kind of a blast to play, so yeah, but moving along, I've kind of rambled here. Let's move on to the next game. On the subject of games that are pretty difficult to play in VR, the next one I want to mention is Polybius. And yeah, one look at this game will probably tell you why I have a difficult time recommending this in VR. This is like the embodiment of everything that aggravates people who are like photosensitive. This is like epilepsy hell for some people. It's really fun to play, but wow, let me tell you, when you start up this game, you have to go through this like little gauntlet of warnings that you kind of got to click through to say, hey, this game, it has it all. High speeds, strobing lights, flashing colors, psychedelic images. You know, if you are photosensitive and you need to avoid this game like the plague, I'm sure just looking at this in 2D is enough to give some people a headache. Now imagine putting on a headset and playing this in VR. Holy smokes, this is, it can be rough. Now, thankfully, I didn't have any major problems with this. There are some moments where it gets really, where there's some strobing lights, typically at the end of levels. It likes doing that when you've kind of completed a level. There's like this little stretch where it like strobes like all these different colors. That kind of hurts my eyes a little bit. It's a little hard to look at, but other than that, I actually have a pretty easy time playing this game. I've always wanted to play it since I saw it featured in that one 9 Inch Nails video. I'm a big 9 Inch Nails fan, and they came out with a video about a couple years ago where they featured this game in it, and I was like, man, that looks really cool. I gotta try that out. And this is my first time playing it, and of course I'm playing it in VR. Of course, there's non-VR versions you can play it. Like, see right there, that kind of hurts my eyes a little bit. I kind of had to look away some, so I didn't have to endure it, but. Yeah, this game's a blast to play, but let me tell you, this is not for VR lightweights. This is, if you are photosensitive, if you're prone to seizures, you need to avoid this game like the plague. It is very, very rough on the eyes. Let me tell you, it's it can be brutal. But I did enjoy playing it. I can't remember how much it cost, but there's a lot of content. I think it's like something close to like 50 stages. So there's a lot of replayability, and there's like kind of like an online high score mode, so you can go on there and see if you can get the high score and make it to the top 10 or whatever. So you can try that if you really want to. Of course, if you just want it for the experience, it's pretty good. It's a pretty fun game to play. As you can tell, it's kind of evocative of something like Tempest, something kind of like that. In fact, this game is actually based on a popular, I guess you could call it an urban myth that originated back in like the early 80s when arcades were extremely popular. It was like the place to go if you wanted to play video games. I can't remember where it originated from. Somewhere, I think in like the Northwest, maybe somewhere out west. But there's like legends of an arcade somewhere that had this game called Polybius in there, and people had a difficult time describing what kind of game it was like and how it played. And apparently, it was super addictive, and it like messed with the heads of the people who played it. And they were saying it was part of like some sort of secret CIA plot to test mind control on people, and it was only in arcades for like a few weeks or like a month, and then it was gone. And of course it probably never existed. It was probably just a story they spread around to just for laughs. You know how people are. But apparently a few years ago someone decided, like, let's try and actually make that game. Let's try to see, like, if Polybius actually existed, like, what would it look like? How would it play? And they made this, and this is what it looks like, and it's super psychedelic, and there's a lot of imagery in it that's, I guess you could say, evocative of stuff from classic arcade games. Like, there's stuff in there that reminds you of, like, Space Invaders and Centipede and stuff like that. So it's really, really cool. It's really fun, but man, this is not something I would recommend for VR lightweights. Hell, I'm sure some people that don't even like or are interested or playing in VR would have a hard time playing this just because it's visual sensory overload. It's pretty crazy. And like, yeah, when that little like mesh circular cage gets in your face, like it really feels like it's there. It can really kind of mess with your vision and make it hard to see stuff. And when it gets fast, it's really difficult to detect things that are coming. So it's a little easier to see looking at this 2D footage, but in VR, when you start going fast, like, whoa, it really messes with you. So, but it was a lot of fun. And if you can handle VR, if you're not prone to motion sickness or things like that, then you'll probably enjoy this game quite a lot. It was a lot of fun to play. But yeah, like I said, this is not for VR lightweights. And that just about does it for all the games that I have on my PlayStation VR, at least for now. I'll probably get some more in the future. Just wanted to go ahead and show off some of that for y'all. I'm having a lot of fun with my VR headset. I don't know if some of y'all are interested in me making footage or videos of me using the VR headset. I'm definitely open to it. I don't know if any of the games that I showed here are stuff you would be interested in seeing me do a Let's Play or anything of. If you are interested, do let me know down in the comments section. Or if you do have any questions about the PSVR, about the headset or the technology or the setup, then go ahead and give me some questions. Or if you have suggestions on other games you would like to see me play. I would like to try out that Rick and Morty game at some point, but I think you need a Move controller in order to play it, so I'll definitely get that at some point. But yeah, if you have any suggestions on any other games on the PlayStation VR you would like for me to try out, go ahead and leave me some suggestions, some comments. I want to know what y'all think, and maybe you don't even care. Maybe you don't want to see any of this VR content and you want me to just go back to playing Smite or finish my little Dark Souls 2 run, which I will be doing. I haven't given up on that. But yeah, just go ahead and give me some suggestions. I do enjoy my VR headset, and I wanted to go ahead and show it off and get some of y'all's impressions of it, see if you're wanting to see me make content on it in the future. Yeah, that's it. I've rambled on long enough. This video is getting pretty long. Leave me some comments down in the comment section. It's my favorite part about making videos on YouTube. And as always, y'all be good to each other, and I will see you in the next video.